Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I used to think I was doing everything right. My name's Kyle, and I gave up a lot when Brittany's fitness business took off, my full-time job, my social circle, even my weekends. I believed in her dream. I believed in us. So I stayed home, took care of the house, kept her schedule running like clockwork, managed her social media accounts, and made sure dinner was warm when she walked through the door. People thought I was lucky, married to a gorgeous personal trainer, someone admired online by thousands. But what they didn't see was how small I was becoming. At first, it was just little comments. Things she said when the cameras weren't rolling. You're too sensitive. No one's impressed by a man who folds laundry. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to really grind for something. She'd say it with a smile, like it was a joke. But it never felt like one. When we were out in public, she loved to play the confident wife, laughing louder than anyone else at parties, draping herself in attention while I hung back. At family events, she'd bring up how I played house or babysat the vacuum cleaner all day. My own brother pulled me aside once and asked if we were good. I said we were. Elite. I didn't want people to know what I was starting to admit to myself, that I felt like I was disappearing. The worst of it came during a barbecue at her parents' house. The kind of thing where kids run through sprinklers and adults sip from red plastic cups and pretend to forget the tension in the air. Brittany was surrounded by friends and family, talking about her upcoming trip to Austin. Someone asked if I was going with her. She laughed so hard she snorted. Kyle, please. He gets winded walking to the mailbox. The group chuckled. I froze. My stomach dropped. I forced a smile, but inside, something twisted. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like I was beneath her, like she needed the world to know that she had risen and I had stayed behind. Later that night, I stood at the sink washing dishes while she scrolled through her phone on the couch. I heard her laughing again. Probably it's something one of her influencer friends posted. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What you said earlier, that hurt. She barely looked up. It was a joke. Don't be dramatic. It didn't feel like a joke. God, Kyle. Do I have to walk on eggshells now? Grow up. I went quiet. That's what I usually did. Kept the peace. Took the hit. Told myself she was just stressed or tired or under pressure. But the truth was uglier than that. I started questioning myself constantly. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Had I made myself too small, trying to support her dreams? I'd stare at the mirror some mornings and barely recognize the man looking back. Shoulders slumped, confidence drained, eyes that once had sparked now just tired and unsure. I told myself to hold on, to wait until Austin was over. Maybe she'd come back refreshed. Maybe she'd notice me again. Maybe I was just being sensitive. But something was already shifting. A crack in the surface, small but widening. And it was only a matter of time before everything broke wide open. The week after that family barbecue felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. Every interaction with Brittany was thinly veiled tension, like we were pretending we hadn't both heard the shift in her tone or felt the distance thickening between us. I kept going through the motions, making coffee the way she liked it, folding her laundry, updating her social media with her posts and promotions. I even proofread the script for her upcoming fitness on livestream, smiling through clenched teeth as she thanked her team on camera without even a glance in my direction. But I kept quiet. Again, part of me didn't know how to speak up anymore. The other part still hoped this was just a rough patch. Friday night rolled around, and she told me we were invited to a game night at Mason and Kara's place. They were a couple we'd known for years, the kind you stay friends without a tradition more than connection. Mason worked with me before I left my job. Kara had gone through 3 career changes in 2 years, but she and Brittany bonded over meal prep and Instagram filters, so we saw them often enough. Brittany dressed like she was going to a photo shoot. Tight black top, gold hoops, makeup sharp enough to cut glass. I told her she looked amazing. She barely mumbled a thanks. At the house, everything was friendly at first. Music playing low, drinks flowing, laughter bouncing off the walls. Brittany was in her element, animated, magnetic, working the room. I mostly stayed near the kitchen, refilling chip bowls and keeping an eye on the scorecard for Pictionary. At one point, I caught her glancing at her phone with a small smile, thumb flicking quickly. She turned the screen slightly away when I passed. That flicker of suspicion that had started last week returned, this time heavier. Then came the moment. One of those small, casual detonations you don't see coming until the shrapnel's already in your chest. We were all sitting in a circle, halfway through a game of most likely to, laughing at the ridiculous suggestions pulled from a deck of cards. Mason read the next one out loud. Most likely to still be unemployed at 40. Before I could process the laughter, Brittany leaned forward with a smirk and said, "Oh, that one's easy. Kyle. He's basically a trophy husband without the trophy part." Silence. A few awkward chuckles from people who didn't know whether to laugh or leave the room. "Je stilte her," stunned. Her eyes didn't waver. She held her wine glass like it was armor. I felt the heat rise in my face, not from shame, but from something sharper. My hands clenched, and I tried to laugh it off, but something cracked. I stood up. "Actually," I said, my voice louder than I meant, I gave up my job to help you build your brand. I managed your platforms, handled your sponsorship contracts, and made sure your schedule didn't fall apart. So no, I'm not unemployed. I'm just the guy behind the curtain you never bother to acknowledge." The room went still. Mason set his drink down slowly. Kara looked from me to Brittany, unsure what to say. But I wasn't finished. "And let's be honest," I added, "if I hadn't been here handling everything, your little Austin Expo would have been just another excuse to disappear for a week." That last line wasn't planned. It just came out raw and sharp. Brittany's eyes flashed, and she stood up, jaw tight. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means." Her face hardened. "Don't embarrass yourself." I laughed bitterly. Too late for that. Nobody moved. You could have heard a pin drop. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something settle in my chest. It wasn't victory. It wasn't peace. But it was real, and it was mine. I left without another word. Drove home alone. The streetlights passed in a blur. And for the first time since we met, I didn't feel guilty for thinking about what my life would be without her. Back at the house, I sat in the driveway for a long time. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The silence was heavy, but not hollow. I realized how much of myself I'd given away, trying to keep her happy. How many of my own ambitions I'd buried, just to be her support system. But support systems aren't meant to be stepped on. And that's exactly what I'd become. Something she leaned on until it stopped being useful. The door stayed closed. She didn't come home that night. I didn't bother calling. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every conversation we'd had in the last year. Every put-down dressed up as humor. Every time she made me feel like I had to apologize just for existing. And I started to see it all clearly, not as random outbursts, but a pattern, a strategy. Diminish me so she wouldn't have to face what she was doing. I wasn't just an afterthought. I was the excuse. The cracks weren't just forming. They'd been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. And now that I had, I wasn't sure what would happen next. But I knew this much, whatever it was, I wouldn't be staying silent anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a cold side of the bed and the low hum of silence throughout the house. I didn't bother texting Brittany. She hadn't come home. Or maybe she had while I was asleep and slipped out before sunrise. Either way, I wasn't chasing her. Not this time. Not after what happened. There was a numb clarity in me now, like the air right before a storm, still, loaded, waiting to break. I made coffee, walked through the house like a stranger in his own home. The dishes from Thursday were still in the sink. A shaker bottle lay sideways on the counter, its contents hardened like cement. Her duffel bag from earlier in the week was tossed by the front door, half-zipped and bulging. I stared at it for a moment, debating, then I crouched down, pulled the zipper open. No workout clothes, no protein packs, just a neatly folded silk robe, high-end perfume, a pair of heels I'd never seen before, and a small lace set that definitely wasn't made for exercise. I sat back on my heels, the realization hitting harder than I expected. This wasn't a packing mistake. This was a different kind of trip entirely. Something ugly clawed up my throat, but I swallowed it down. I checked the bathroom. Her travel toiletry kit was gone. I opened the closet. Her favorite black dress, the one she claimed was too fancy for casual nights out, was missing. My heart beat faster, and my hands felt clumsy as I started looking deeper. Not to confirm a suspicion anymore, but to see how far it went. In the bedroom, I remembered a small decorative box she always kept in her drawer. She called it her vision box, said it was filled with goals and motivation cards. I hadn't looked inside in years. I almost didn't want to, but curiosity has a way of mutating into necessity. I pulled it out, peeled the lid off, and everything stopped. Inside wasn't paper. It was a small black leather gift box, the kind you get from a luxury store. I opened it slowly. Inside was a watch. Sleek, minimalist, expensive. Not mine. Still wrapped in its original protective film. Under it, a folded note with neat handwriting. Can't wait to spend real time with you in Austin. No more secrets, Jay. I sat there for what felt like hours, that note shaking between my fingers. My jaw tightened. I read it again, then a third time. No more secrets. It all came into focus, every distant glance, every turned screen, every cruel joke meant to push me lower so she could justify whatever this was. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She had replaced me. Mentally, physically, emotionally. And she had planned it with care. Her trip to Austin wasn't about fitness. It was about him. I didn't scream, didn't punch the wall. I just felt quiet, numb but alert, like the moment right before you decide to act. That was the thing. I could have confronted her right then, texted her a photo of the watch, demanded the truth, cursed her out. But where would that get me? Another lie, another attempt to spin it. I didn't want her words anymore. I wanted proof. I wanted the truth to expose itself, undeniable and clean. I put everything back exactly how I found it, down to the crease of the note. I slid the box back in its place, closed the drawer, and stood there for a long time. Then I went to the garage. I had an old toolbox from my tech job before I left to help with Brittany's career. I pulled it out, found my small set of trackers. I'd bought them years ago to keep tabs on camera gear when we traveled, but never used them. Small, magnetic, discreet. I charged one up, loaded the app on my phone, and walked to her car parked in the driveway. Within minutes, it was placed under the back bumper, tucked beside the frame, undetectable. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, phone on the nightstand, eyes locked on the GPS that marked her car. Around 10:42 p.m., it moved. Not toward the airport, not to a hotel, a residential neighborhood on the other side of town. The location pinged again 20 minutes later, parked in front of a modern-looking townhouse. She stayed there for hours. Came back around 3. The next day, I told her nothing. I played the part, cleaned the kitchen, asked about her expo. She fed me some generic story about panel discussions and networking. I nodded, smiled, poured her coffee. By now, I had 2 jobs, keep up the illusion, and follow the trail. I started syncing everything. Her public posts, the stories she shared, the ones she reposted from other influencers. There was one name that kept popping up. A guy, built, handsome, popular, someone who lived in Austin. They'd been interacting a lot, liking each other's photos, commenting just enough to stay under the radar. He posted from the same coffee shop she claimed she'd visited. Same view, same day, just not at the same time. But when I ran the metadata on one of his images, yeah, I know my way around that stuff, it showed it was taken the same hour she posted hers. Different angles. Same place. He didn't tag her. She didn't tag him. But the timing? Perfectly aligned. I wasn't dealing with an affair of passion. This was planned. They were careful. Private Airbnb. Separate posts. No kuroshobe. But I had what I needed. Photos, timestamps, location data. All I needed now was something that no one could argue with. The hardest part? Pretending I didn't know. Acting normal around her while every fiber of my body buzzed with betrayal. But I kept going, because when the truth comes out, it needs to hit so hard that no amount of denial can save her. And that time was coming fast. The hardest part about revenge isn't the planning, it's the waiting. Waking up every day, brushing shoulders with the person who gutted your trust, and pretending everything's fine while your hands are building the cage they'll eventually step into. I wasn't rushing this. Not after everything I'd seen. Not when the stakes were this high. Brittany had underestimated me. She still thought I was the same quiet husband who folded towels while she built her empire on camera. She didn't know she was standing on a trapdoor. Every time she walked through the front door and tossed her gym bag aside like I didn't exist, I took notes. Every time she smiled in her phone and angled her face just right for selfies she never sent me, I tracked the posts. When she left for her next early client session, I watched her car's GPS glide across town to that same townhouse. The one I now knew belonged to the influencer she'd been DMing for months. His name was Marcus. His face was all over sponsored fitness ads, protein bars, gym wear. And now, without realizing it, his face was going to be her undoing. The day I found the watch and that little handwritten note, I had already decided what kind of ending this would have. No yelling, no begging, no confrontation that would let her flip the script and cry her way into sympathy. This had to be clean, quiet, public, permanent. So I started by replacing the gift. It took some effort, but I found a knockoff that looked close enough. Same size, same weight, same box. I slipped it into her drawer, left the original with me, and waited. It gave me time to make the next move. I had access to all her social media platforms. She'd never changed the passwords because, in her mind, I was just the help. I hentede her video uploads, tjekket sponsor emails, managed her kalenderintegrations. She trusted me to post everything. That trust, after all the lies she fed me, was the opening I needed. But I needed more than location tags and gut instinct. I needed something undeniable, something she couldn't twist or downplay. So I reached out, not to her, to him. It was late one night when I created a second Facebook account, clean and untraceable, and messaged Marcus. I didn't accuse him of anything. I didn't threaten. I just said, hey man, I think we've both been lied to. You've been seeing someone I'm married to. I'm not coming to you with drama. Just the truth. I attached a photo of our wedding day. Her in a white dress. Me smiling, completely unaware of what she'd become. He didn't reply that night. But the next morning, I woke up to a new message. Dude, I had no idea she was married. She told me she was single. She ghosted me when I found out. I'm done. Thought you should know. Attached were two pictures. One was a mirror selfie. Brittany, wrapped in a towel, standing in the Airbnb bathroom I'd seen in his feed. The other was her sitting on the edge of the bed, smiling at the camera, completely comfortable. There was no denying it now. It wasn't just a guess or suspicion. It was fact. I stared at those images for a long time. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. It was just quiet. Like the final page of a story you already knew the ending to. I didn't feel rage. Just clarity. The next steps came easy. I downloaded the photos, saved the messages, backed up her DMs in case she tried to clean them out. Then I went to the post queue I used for her fitness page. She had a few posts scheduled for the week, one about meal prepping, another about mental toughness. I deleted them all, and I uploaded one of my own. It was the mirror pic, the one of her in the towel, cropped just enough to keep it within policy, but unmistakably her. I added a caption that said everything I needed to say. Behind every fitness transformation is a lie. Just ask my wife. No hashtags. No tags. Just that. Then I hit publish. And I waited. At first, nothing. A few likes. Then a comment. Then 24. Then hundreds. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Her followers started asking questions. Sponsors started pulling tags. Fitness forums lit up. By noon, the post had gone viral. And by the time Brittany came home, the damage was irreversible. She stormed through the door, phone in hand, eyes wide with fury. What the hell did you do? I was sitting on the couch, calm, collected, a man with nothing left to lose. I told the truth, I said. She flung her phone down. You embarrassed me. You ruined everything. No, I said, standing. You ruined it. I just gave the world a front row seat. Her face twisted, torn between rage and panic. She paced like a cornered animal. She tried to say something else, probably to turn it back on me, but I was done listening. You don't live here anymore, I said, walking past her. Your gym keys deactivated. Your suitcase is on the porch. Divorce papers are taped to the door. She froze. You're serious? As a heart attack. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove to the training center. There was a new client waiting. Brittany's former best friend. She smiled when she saw me and said, "Ready to get to work?" I nodded. More than ever. The days that followed were strange, calm, almost peaceful, but with that same edge you feel when you know a storm's circling back. The post hadn't just gone viral, it detonated like a bomb. The comments section turned into a wildfire. People who had followed Britney for years began reposting the image with their own captions: betrayal, hypocrisy, fake influencer, liar. Her sponsors didn't wait long. One after another, they cut ties publicly. They didn't want to be associated with scandal. And her silence made it worse. She didn't post. She didn't go live. Her brand, built on curated authenticity, collapsed under the weight of one truth. But I wasn't finished. It wasn't enough to let the world know who she was. I needed her to face me. Face everything she had done. Not with a keyboard between us. Not filtered through PR damage control. I needed her to see me, the man she once promised forever to, standing across from her with everything laid bare. So when the tracker pinged again, showing her back at that same townhouse with Marcus, despite the fallout, I knew what had to happen. I drove across town in silence. I didn't feel adrenaline. I didn't feel fear. Just focus. I parked half a block away, watched from behind tinted windows as her car sat in the driveway, perfectly at ease. She was still clinging to the lie. Still pretending her new life wasn't born from deception. I stepped out, adjusted my jacket, and walked to the front door. It wasn't locked. I didn't barge in. I knocked once, firm and clear. The door opened a moment later, and Marcus stood there, shirtless, eyebrows raised. "You again," he muttered. "Relax," I said. "I'm not here to fight. Just want a minute." He looked back into the house, then stepped aside. I walked in. Britney was in the living room, sitting on a white couch with a blanket wrapped around her. When she saw me, she sat up straighter but didn't speak. Her eyes flicked between me and Marcus, calculating. I stayed standing. "You're still here," I said, "even after everything." She tried to compose herself, pulling the blanket tighter. "What do you want?" "I want you to listen. No interruptions. No fake tears. Just listen." She crossed her arms, but didn't say no. "I believed in you," I began. "From day one, I supported you. I stayed up editing your videos, answered emails you never saw, dealt with sponsors who only reached out because I made sure the back end was handled. I gave up everything to build something for us. Not just for you, for us." She looked away, jaw clenched. "And you rewarded that with lies. With disrespect. With making me the punchline at every party. You humiliated me, Britney. You made me feel small so you could feel bigger." Her mouth opened like she might argue, but I raised a hand. "You don't get to talk yet." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the original watch, the real one, and placed it on the coffee table. "You gave this to him, along with everything else you once promised me." Her face went pale. "You had the whole world fooled. You even fooled him," I said, nodding toward Marcus. "But me? I lived with you. I knew when you started hiding. When you started treating me like I didn't matter. And now you want to act like you're the victim because the truth came out." She stood up, face red now. "You blindsided me. You could have talked to me. I tried," I said sharply. "I beg you to respect me. I asked you to stop tearing me down. And every time, you made me feel like I was the problem." I turned to Marcus. "And you, this isn't on you anymore. You reached out. You told me the truth. You did more in one message than she did in a year." He gave a quiet nod, not meeting Britney's eyes. I looked back at her. "You can blame me all you want. Say I ruined your brand. Say I embarrassed you. But deep down, you know the truth. You weren't loyal. You weren't honest. You weren't a partner." The silence was thick. Her lip quivered, but no words came. "I'm not here to fight," I said again. "I just wanted you to look me in the eyes and understand what you destroyed." I turned to leave. "Wait," she said suddenly. "What now?" I paused. Now you live with it." Then I walked out. The air hit me like a reset. Crisp. Open. I walked to my car, each step feeling lighter than the one before. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Back home, the house felt different. Brighter, even with the same paint on the walls. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the quiet settle around me. Not emptiness, just peace. She had lied. She had betrayed me. But she didn't win, because I still had my name, my dignity, my future. And now, finally, it was mine again. It took her 2 days to show up. Long enough for me to settle into the silence. Short enough to remind me she was still trying to control the narrative. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through old paperwork when I heard the knock, sharp, impatient like always. I didn't rush to the door. I let her wait. When I opened it, she looked different. Makeup smudged from crying or lack of sleep. Hair pulled back in a way that said she didn't care how she looked anymore, or maybe just didn't have the energy. She stood on the porch like a ghost of herself, holding her phone like it might shield her. "Can we talk?" she asked. I leaned against the doorframe. "You've done a lot of talking. To the world. To Marcus. To everyone but me." She didn't respond right away. Just looked past me into the house. I didn't invite her in. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I was stupid. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I raised an eyebrow. Didn't mean for what to go that far? Lying? Cheating? Living a second life in another city while I covered for you here? Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to throw it all in my face." I laughed once, dry, sharp. "No, you did that yourself. I just turned the lights on." She stepped closer. "I lost everything, Kyle. My sponsors are gone. My clients are leaving. People are dragging me online. Good, I cut in. Now you know what it feels like." Her face twisted, a mix of guilt and something else. Something defensive. "I know I hurt you. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But you humiliated me." I shook my head slowly. "No, you embarrassed yourself. I just made sure no one missed it." For a second, the air between us froze. She looked like she wanted to yell, or cry, or both. But instead, she dropped her voice and said, "We can fix this. We've been through worse." "No," I said, steady. "You put me through worse." And I took it. I swallowed every insult, every cold shoulder, every time you made me feel like I didn't matter. Because I thought marriage meant fighting for each other. I thought love meant sacrifice. But all I ever did was shrink myself so you could feel bigger. "I didn't ask you to do that," she said quickly. "No, you just expected it." She went quiet. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. "You came here to convince me to stay. Or maybe just not make it worse. But the truth is, I'm already gone. The guy who put up with all of it, he's not here anymore." She wiped her eyes, desperate now. "We had a life. A history." I nodded. "And now we have a lesson." She looked like she wanted to argue again, but she didn't. She just stood there, breathing hard, waiting for me to fold. I didn't. "You should go," I said. "Your things are already boxed. Your name's off the lease. The divorce papers are signed on my end. All that's left is for you to stop pretending we're still something we're not." She stared at me for a long time. Then, finally, she turned and walked down steps. I didn't watch her drive away. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because for once, I wasn't lying to myself. The next morning, I poured coffee in a quiet kitchen, opened the blinds, and let the sun hit my face without thinking about how it might look in someone else's Instagram story. I wasn't a sidekick anymore. I wasn't her support system. I was a man who had been burned down and was learning to build again. She tried to call twice the next day. I didn't answer. She left a long voicemail I didn't bother listening to. There was nothing left to explain. I'd seen the truth. I'd lived inside the lie, and I'd stepped out of it for good. The funny thing was, as soon as I stopped chasing her approval, I started seeing myself again. The man who used to have drive. The man who cracked jokes and didn't second-guess every word. I started going back to the gym, not for revenge, not for image. For me, to feel my body again, to take up space. I reconnected with a few old friends, the kind who asked where I'd been all this time, the kind who didn't care about follower counts or sponsorship deals. I told them the truth, not the viral version, just the real one. One of them said, "You're handling this better than I would have." I smiled. I had a lot of time to think about it while I was invisible. And now, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was done cleaning up someone else's mess. Divorce was never something I imagined myself preparing for, let alone organizing like a project plan. But when you've spent the last year quietly holding your world together while someone else tears it down, facing paperwork almost feels like a relief. At least with documents, everything's written down, clear, clean, real. No lies to read between. No sarcasm to untangle. Just the truth in black and white. I hired a lawyer 2 days after Brittany left the porch. Her name was Dana. Calm, sharp, no nonsense. She didn't flinch when I laid everything out. What Brittany had done how she manipulated me, the evidence I had. She sat across from me in a small, clean office, hands folded, listening without interruption. When I was done, she nodded and said, "You're not here to burn her life down. You're here to reclaim yours." That was it. One sentence, and I knew I'd picked the right person. Brittany, of course, didn't take things so gracefully. The day she was served, I got a string of texts that started with disbelief, shifted into threats, and ended in half-hearted apologies. I didn't respond to any of them. The silence must have infuriated her, because by the following week, she had lawyered up and started spinning her version of events. She's claiming emotional abandonment. Dana told me during one of our meetings. Says you checked out of the relationship before she ever stepped out. She's building a story. I almost laughed. So now she wants to be the victim. She's not dumb. Her brand's in free fall. She's trying to frame you as the reason she slipped. Says you isolated her. Didn't support her enough. I shook my head slowly, fingers tapping the table. I supported her every day for 3 years. I gave up everything so she could chase her dream. I was the one holding it together while she built herself into someone else entirely. Good, Dana said. Then prove it. We spent the next week collecting everything. Emails, old contracts, payment histories from her sponsorships, every one of which I had negotiated or managed. I pulled up content schedules I'd built, scripts I'd edited, calendar reminders I'd set for brand deals. We compiled screenshots from her messages with Marcus, the tracker logs, the original photo from the Airbnb, and the time-stamped metadata. It wasn't just gossip, it was documentation. She tried to delay the first mediation session, said she needed time. Her lawyer requested more evidence, more leniency, more space to evaluate the impact this exposure has had on her mental health. That was the one that really got me. The sudden vulnerability from someone who had no problem humiliating me at dinner tables, in group chats, on live streams where she called me her house manager. But I didn't argue. I let the facts do the talking. When we finally sat down across from each other, it wasn't a courtroom. It was a conference room, quiet, professional, sterile. She showed up in a beige blazer and minimal makeup, the version of herself she used for rebranding attempts. I saw through it immediately. So did Dana. Brittany's lawyer opened first. My client wants to resolve this with as little damage as possible. She's willing to discuss a fair division of assets, but she feels that the recent viral content has endangered her career and reputation. She's requesting that those posts be taken down as part of any agreement. Dana didn't flinch. My client is not responsible for her choices. The post simply revealed what she was hiding. He's under no obligation to protect her public image, especially not after the betrayal. Brittany looked at me, her jaw tight. I said I was sorry. I didn't deserve to be publicly dragged like that. I looked right back at her. You didn't deserve to keep pretending. Her lawyer shuffled a stack of papers, avoiding eye contact. In terms of property and business, Dana leaned forward. Let's be clear. Kyle handled 70% of her digital work. Without compensation, we can break down the hours if needed. They tried to downplay it. Said I was just assisting, just helping as a spouse. Dana had come prepared. She dropped a thick folder on the table. Timelines, contracts, evidence. The room went silent. From there, the tone changed. Suddenly, they were interested in settling. She wanted to keep her equipment, her car, the remainder of her brand account funds. I agreed on one condition. You can have your brand, I said, but the house is mine. The car's in both names. I'll keep it. I'm not paying you a cent. You made this mess. You live in it. She looked stunned. You're serious? Dana smiled slightly. He's very serious. There was some back and forth, but in the end, they folded. Too much heat on her. Too much evidence on my side. She wanted it done before more people started digging. We signed a preliminary agreement that day. As I left the building, papers in hand, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped playing by her rules. She had taken so much from me, but she didn't get the last word. That belonged to me now. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.